Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is, we're so glad you have joined us. I'm the Reverend Cheryl Butler, and this is Journey Road Ministries, where we seek to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. Today is the fourth Sunday after Epiphany, and our Gospel reading for today is from the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 1, verses 21 through 28. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as scribes. Just then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. And he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. The Gospel of the Lord. Today we will hear a message from the Reverend Mary Dyer.
Today is the fourth Sunday after Epiphany. The message is on "My religion is kindness," how this Dalai Lama sums up Buddhism. The last 3 times I did a homily, it was a big feast. First and fourth Sundays of Advent, where the readings were focused on the birth of Jesus and the baptism of Jesus. We are now entering a period that the Church calls ordinary time, where the Christian community has a short respite between the end of the Advent to Epiphany season and the beginning of Lent, ending in Easter. But ironically, it's my favorite time. I just like life in its simple, daily ordinariness. Between festivals and celebrations, just daily chores and joys and sorrows as we try to live in community. I usually focus on the gospel reading, which today is the story of Jesus healing a man with an unclean spirit during a Sabbath service in Capernaum. Yet the Spirit called me to focus on the epistle reading instead. This comes from 1 Corinthians 8, verses 1 to 13, from the New Revised Standard Version. "Now concerning food sacrificed to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Anyone who claims to know something does not yet have the necessary knowledge. But anyone who loves God is known by him. Hence, as to the eating of food offered to idols, we know that no idol in the world really exists, and that there is no God but one. It is not everyone, however, who has this knowledge. Some since have become too accustomed to idols until now, that they still think of the food they eat as food offered to an idol, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. Food does not bring us close to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat, and no better off if we do. But take care that this liberty of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. For if others see you, who possess knowledge, eating in the temple of an idol, might they not, since their conscience is so weak, be encouraged to the point of eating food sacrificed to idols? So by your knowledge, those weak believers for whom Christ died are destroyed. But when you thus sin against members of your family and wound their conscience when it is weak, you sin against Christ. Therefore, if food is a cause of their failing, I will never eat meat sacrificed to an idol, so that I might not cause one of them to fall. You may be wondering, how the heck does that apply to me? We don't have meat sacrificed to idols. We're way beyond that. Maybe we don't, but this reading really isn't only about sacrificial meat to idols and the obligation to be conscious of other people's limited knowledge. It's how to live ethically in Christian community. Paul learned that the kosher laws of his very strict upbringing as an Orthodox Jew simply did not apply to him anymore. Yet he also knew that others of this new faith had not advanced as far in their own thinking, and they would have considered it deeply offensive, especially for their leader, to eat this banned meat. So Paul, realizing the situation, said that in consideration of the risk to their newfound faith, he did not have to eat that tainted meat. It reminds me of the vicious and totally unwarranted debate over the wearing or not wearing of masks. One side that is concerned with the scientific findings for the need for masks and social distancing and wanting to respect and honor their neighbors, wears it even if possibly they might not believe in it. They simply do it as a consideration to others. The other, through their invincible ignorance and their narcissistic need to claim that they have the so-called freedom to not wear the mask, so they go maskless, resulting in many unnecessary deaths. If we took the previous reading from Paul and applied it to the present, Paul himself would have put on a mask, I think, and kept it on, no matter what his personal beliefs. He would have done it out of respect to his community. So again, today is just an ordinary Sunday in the church year. No saints to celebrate, no important dates to celebrate, just an ordinary day to live out the Christian life. One of my favorite spiritual writers is Brother Lawrence. Not many people know about him. He was born in the 17th century of parents who were illiterate peasants. He became a lay monk in a monastery in France. His job? Being a cook and a dishwasher, not very glamorous. Yet his meditations on spiritual life have much to offer us. My favorite one is this: we ought not to be weary of doing little things for the love of God, who regards not the greatness of the work, but the love with which it is performed. So today I want to celebrate the little things, the little people, the little acts of kindness that bind us together on uneventful days and on Sundays in ordinary time. Paul evidently exhibited an act of kindness to his fellow workers when he gave up eating meat that had been sacrificed. He didn't give it up to go hungry. He kept eating. Yet his simple act acknowledged that he lived in community, where all were his brothers and sisters. When asked to summarize the deep belief of Buddhists, again, the Dalai Lama said simply, "My religion is kindness," not orthodoxy or a Trinitarian or other statement of faith held too rigidly. And I saw that at Biden's inauguration. There was a part of it where people from from all over the United States read parts of speeches from the previous presidents from their inaugural addresses. And one was of a young boy that read it, and I was very glad, but I didn't know who this young boy was until I read more about it. His name is Braden Harrington, a New Jersey teenager.
In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
But I still wondered why that particular young man had been chosen out of so many, many others that would qualify. Then I heard the backstory. President Biden, in one of his campaign speeches before he was elected, stayed after to answer all of the questions that the small crowd, small due to COVID, had to ask. And this one young boy, Braden Harrington, asked him about the stuttering that Biden had had to overcome. And Braden said, I'm a stutterer. And so Biden embraced him, not only with his words, but actually going down face to face with him, encouraging him to keep working, to not let the stuttering with which he was born confine him or his dreams. And Biden told him it's a hard work, it's a work in progress, but it's worth it. And then he went on to become the President of the United States. And also, I look at my own failings to see where I might be failing in kindness. I generally think of myself as a pretty kind person, but I must admit the last 4 years has probably brought out the worst of me on Facebook. As I read so many comments from QAnon and Trump supporters and people that do not believe like me, that people have to be treated individually, they have to be treated with dignity. I might get, shall we say, a little bit forceful and use words I might not want to use in a homily. And so I've been examining that, and I'm not ready to go cold turkey because I will never not speak out when I see an injustice. But I'm trying to soften my tone to respond in a way that might invite a dialogue rather than just another angry meme with the middle finger raised, and that has happened more than once. And it too is a long, hard work, and I'm making progress, but I'm not there yet. But I also thought of another time I had never thought of as an act of kindness, but a few years ago, almost 30 years ago, when I lived in Corvallis, Oregon, I and many others went to some sort of a twilight rally. I can't even remember the cause right now, but as the dusk deepened into night, we all lit our candles. But there was no moment of silence. Everyone, was just hanging out and holding their candles up, and I thought, what we're protesting deserves our full attention and respect. And I didn't know how to stop people from just chattering. Didn't have a bullhorn, but I thought, what if I alone, by myself, just started singing in my wavering and not particularly good singing voice, Dona nobis pacem. So I started it, and one by one, people stopped their idle chatter and started singing it with me until the entire crowd was singing it. And so In the first instance, I have a great deal of work to do in my responding to people that I don't think particularly kindly of, I might add. And in the other, just that simple stepping out of the crowd and starting something different transformed the whole occasion. So I'm going to be bringing this homily to a close, but Margaret Mead, the famous anthropologist, was often asked, how do you tell, if you believe in evolution, that the giant apes could be considered hominids working towards being humans? And it wasn't the use of tools, because we know monkeys use tools, squirrels build nests using weaving of weave. So it wasn't that. She said, I knew when I found the first skeleton that had a broken bone in its lower leg. It's like, well, what would that mean? Well, the meaning was that it had actually healed together. She could tell it had been broken, but it was healed. And the only way that could have happened in a primitive society, an illiterate society with very simple tools, was if the other members of the tribe kept that person alive, kept feeding him, bathing him, taking care of all of his bodily needs for many, many weeks until he could hopefully rejoin the work of the tribe just to survive. So as we end our time together, I will leave you with the words of the young poet laureate, Amanda Gorman, whose young voice and clear vision has given all of us a vision of dreams coming true and doing simple acts of kindness.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. In the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is hours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Wow.